I'm Don Francis. I'm the coordinator here in Georgia for the Department of Energy Clean Cities program. What's Clean Cities? You never heard of it, because we don't normally just deal with fleets. This program's been in place 25 years, and the focus of this program is reducing the nation's dependency on imported or any kind of petroleum fuel, because we're getting a lot of it domestically these days. 95% of our transportation energy comes from one source. City of Atlanta is 3 days away from walking. That pipeline through Alabama broke twice in the last 10 years that I've been the coordinator. 3 days later, the gas stations run out of fuel. I was driving around during those days. There were electrons everywhere. Not a problem. So it's what we all talk about, resiliency as well. That this is a technology that allows us to integrate ourselves in with all types of fuel sources, whether it's solar, wind, nuclear, hydroelectric, coal, natural gas. It doesn't matter what the source is. There we go. Okay, so what we're all about is reduce, replace, eliminate. I spend most of our time over here on the replace side, which is getting you to use something other than gasoline or diesel. We don't care, biodiesel. We make fuel now from soybeans. It'll help the farmers all over our country. Electricity, hydrogen, natural gas, propane, ethanol. We're going to talk tonight about mostly electric. Whoops, no, I got to go back one. Okay, I'm surprised Cornelius didn't use this slide because I stole it from him. We have done this many times in the past. There's a guy named Tony Seba. I saw him speak a couple of years ago about this transition to electric. He thinks it's a 10-year event. He held up a cell phone, smartphone. He said, 10 years ago, you didn't have one of these things. You didn't even think you needed it. Today, if you leave the house without it, you will turn around and go back and get it. You can't go through the day. It drives my wife crazy. My son and I will be sitting at dinner with her in a restaurant, and the two of us are on our phones. Says, talk to me. Okay, I send her a text. Oops, I got to put this down. I'm going to mess things up. Okay, same scene, 13 years apart. 1900, one car, too many horses. 13 years later, all cars, one horse. The other thing that Cornelius, and this is another line I stole from him. I steal a lot of stuff from him. If you'd asked somebody in 1900 what they wanted in future transportation, they said, I want a faster horse. They didn't think they needed a car. The other thing that he brought to my attention I didn't think about is every one of those horses produces 25 pounds of emissions every day. The city of New York was concerned they were going to be buried in horse manure. They had an emissions problem they didn't know what to do with. It solved itself. You've seen this slide. I won't go through the slides some of the others have covered, but it's coming, and it's coming fast. Let's see, I'm not holding my mouth right again. Oh, there we go. You've also seen this. All the prognosticators are saying this is going to come quickly. The only thing they're arguing about today is this a 10-year event? Is it a 20-year event? Is it a 30-year event? There's three types of electric drive vehicles out there. We're all familiar with what's called hybrid, straight hybrid. That's the Prius. Lots of vehicles out there now are going to be hybrid. Everybody's hybridizing their vehicles for fuel economy purposes. Allows you to use a very small gasoline engine with electric to provide the torque for acceleration. Plug-in hybrid. Chevrolet Volt has been the poster child of this. It's now been discontinued. Not because the car didn't sell, because GM stopped building the Cruze, so they no longer had a chassis to build the car on. But you'll see all of the other manufacturers, particularly the European manufacturers, do plug-in hybrids because they have rules in Europe where you either can't drive a gasoline vehicle in the center of the city, or you have to pay $5, £10 fee every time you go inside the center of London. So you can drive your gasoline vehicle to the edge of the city, turn the electric on, go into the city and not have to pay any fees. Or the pure battery electric. I think plug-in hybrids are the gateway drug to battery electrics. It gets you used to the idea. Once you become comfortable, you've seen Cornelius talk about how people really drive. You get over 200 miles of range, and suddenly range no longer is an issue because you're charging at home at night or in charging stations that are located up and down the roads or in the businesses or where you work. There'll be chargers everywhere. There almost is chargers everywhere now. We're over 1 million vehicles delivered in the United States. When this all got started, and a lot of this was driven during the Obama administration, they had a goal of 1 million vehicles by 2015. We didn't quite make it. We didn't get to 1 million vehicles until late in 2017, early 2018. But the engineers in the crowd, the slope of the line tells you a lot. It's called the hockey stick effect. And all of a sudden, the adoption rate goes through the ceiling, and you're turning around, and every one of you have got a smartphone in your hand, you can't remember how you got here. Same thing's going to happen. 10 years from now, you're going to be driving an electric vehicle and go, why did I even want a gasoline vehicle? They don't understand that. Here's Bloomberg. When they talk about this, 2040, 54% of the cars sold in the United States will have a plug on it. 2040 is not that far away. It's only 12 years. I hope I'm still around, but I think that's, that's an aggressive adoption rate. Or did I do the math wrong? It's 22 years. Yeah, well. Yeah, that's right. I'm 50 miles from home with a briefcase. I'm the expert. I've also been out of college a lot more years than I'd like to talk about. Here's what's really driving some of this. When you talk about range in dollars per mile, what does that car cost for range? The cost for range is dropping dramatically. The commissioner and some of the others have mentioned my background. I was doing EV1 stuff in 1997, 98, 99. It was, every mile that car would go cost $500. Today, Model 3, the Bolts, down around under $200 cost for every mile. A vehicle cost for the range. So cost of the vehicle for range is going down. You've seen this. This is kind of one of the, critical slides. Let me get back to it. It's a critical slide, and I can't get back to it now. There we go. This is what's going to drive this mass adoption. Tesla has been doing a lot of work on driving costs out of battery. They built a vehicle or a battery manufacturing assembly plant in Nevada called the Mega something or something? Gigafactory, there you go. They're driving the cost out of the battery. When the red line crosses the blue line in about 2021 or so, then the average cost of their vehicle is that of a fairly nice car. Average car in the US today, new car costs $33,000. When it crosses the green line, that means when you walk into the dealership, two cars will be sitting side by side, one's gas, one's electric. They cost the same to buy. The electric costs 10 to 20% of the cost of operating the gasoline vehicle. The only negative is, and they probably go the same distance now, they go 400 miles on a charge. It takes a little longer to refuel. It's 5 minutes to do gasoline. Maybe it takes 20 minutes to do it with electric. If you're stopping on the road. If you're doing it at home, I tell people it takes me 15 seconds to charge my car because I get out of the car, I plug it in, and I walk into the house. The car is now in charge of the charging. It's programmed when to come on, when to shut off. If it doesn't like what's going on, it sends me a text message. Come out and look. It's not right. Something, I can look at it while I'm sitting there watching television. Oh, it's charging. I can go to bed. This is what's going to drive this mass adoption because we're driving the cost out of the vehicle. And this is why we got to do this. If you look at the height of that bar, you can see a 300-mile range vehicle is over 80 grand, or at least it was. It's not so much that way today. So you got to drive the cost out. We're doing that with fuel savings. We're doing that with tax credits. We're getting it down to where they're comparable costs. And we're headed in that direction where that conventional electric or the conventional ICE vehicle, that's internal combustion engine, will be more expensive than electric when you combine not only the cost of purchase, but what's called the cost of operation, or TCO, total cost of ownership. 100-mile range electric vehicle, that's your daily your grocery getter, go to school, go to work. 300-mile range vehicle, you know, I'm got that Model 3 out there, and one of the reasons I picked it, I went to all the places I normally drive: Charlotte, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Nashville, Savannah, Montgomery, Birmingham. They're all within one charge range, and that's where I usually drive. People say, well, what if I want to drive to California? Well, you can. It takes a long time. But when was the last time any of you drove to California? I've driven it twice in my life. I'm 72 years old. One time my dad was driving and I was riding. The other time I actually drove out there. When I'm going to California like I am next month, I'm going down to Hartsfield and getting on an airplane. You know, I'm going to go 48 miles round trip to the airport.
By the way, could you go to the airport, leave your car in a parking lot down there, and pick it up 2 weeks later, and you still have the charge?
Yeah, the what's called phantom drain is about 1% a day. Depends on the car. Teslas are pretty smart cars, and the issue is they're always talking to the mothership. So always talking to Tesla about what's going on. But there are hundreds of places at the airport and at the airport operators where you can park your car. I use Peachy Parking on Sylvan Road. They have free electric vehicle charging. I just make a reservation. They have about 75 spaces, and I plug the car in, and when I come back in 3 days, it's fully charged. But I could leave it there for weeks at a time. And you know, I can talk to it from time to time and see how it's doing. So it's easy to do. And there are 300, or there's 200 plus, there will be 300 chargers at the airport that the city of Atlanta put in. I have lost count of how many other charging stations are around. The place I park, I know there's 75 spaces. If you don't have charging at your park and ride lot, your customers are going to go somewhere else. Population, we are in pretty good shape on EV population now on the left-hand side because we had the tax credit the commissioner talked about. We're going to grow. We'll have 200 or 80, like that's 120,000 EVs in Georgia by 2022. Florida is really going to explode because that's where all the activity is right now. They have, you know, twice our population at least, maybe 3 times soon. And it's a great vehicle for a retiree because it takes you where you want to go, and you don't have to go to the gas station. You don't have to take it in for maintenance and all those kind of nasty little things you have to do. And they're also becoming autonomous. So I've told my kids that hopefully you will not take the keys away from me like I had to take away from my mother, because I'll get in that car and it'll drive me where I want to go. So that's the plan. And I think we'll get there. Oops. One more, backup one. Okay. If this was kind of brought up, and this is another thing that's going on. People said, well, it's just a dirty coal-fired car. Even if you take into account the current mixture of where the generation sources are, you'd have to drive a car that got more than 56 miles per gallon to equal the emissions of a current electric vehicle. But you could look around the country, you go up into the Northwest, it's almost 100 miles per gallon because they have a lot of hydroelectric power up there, very clean power. That continues to go up. And nationwide, 80 miles per gallon is the equivalent emissions. And we're talking about carbon emissions. We're not talking about what are called criteria pollution, that is NOx, which is one of the reasons we have air quality issues here in Atlanta. EVs are like a 90% reduction in the amount of criteria pollution, so it's really going to clean up the atmosphere in places like Atlanta where our air quality issues are due to our vehicles. Sources of energy, this is nationwide. Compared again, less than half the greenhouse gas emissions of a gasoline vehicle. The other thing that people don't talk about is I spent half of my career working for General Motors in vehicle emission technology before I came to Georgia Power. The best day of a gasoline car is the day you drive it off the showroom floor. It eventually turns into that smoking pile of junk that you hate to follow in traffic. That's going to happen. An electric vehicle, because the emissions from the plants get lower over time, it gets cleaner over time. Gasoline vehicle doesn't. Even a new vehicle, it's half the greenhouse gas emissions or less. It's going to get better as time goes on. Charging technology was briefly touched on. This is one of the areas where we have a challenge. We have 3 competing standards in the United States. Level 1, level 2 up here, the green stuff. That is the J1772, that's the 5-pin thing. Every vehicle adapts to that, including Teslas. They give you an adapter so you can use those charging stations. Which when we get into DC fast charging, that we have 3 different standards. And that creates a little bit of a problem because you need to know what standard your car has and what standard it's compatible with. People are working on this color coding, kind of like you'd see color coding at a gasoline station. So you kind of know which pump you need to find. And it'll be on the maps. You saw some of the maps already. Let me go back to this one slide. Yeah, you get the adapter that allows you to connect to them. But yeah, you get a level 1 charger. Yeah, that's an additional, yeah, you got to buy one of those. Tesla's done a really good job about deploying the chargers. And since you go a lot farther, I've never had to use anybody else's charger but a Tesla charger. So it's not an issue. Because this is what's going on. There are at least 60,000 places in the United States to charge your car. The last time I counted here in Georgia, we were about 2,500 places to charge your car. You've seen PlugShare, great app. Everybody uses it. The Department of Energy has a site. It's called the Alternative Fuel Data Center. Station Locator, right here. Click on that. It'll pull up where you're at. Show you where all the chargers are. Show you what technology are used at, what the price is, because some are free, some are not. What the access is, are they available 24 hours a day? You know, I know the stations here in front of this facility are in that application. They also appear in your navigation system on the car. So you will know as you're driving down the road, I see the charging stations on the map, so I know where they're at. I find them that way. Or I go looking for them. You can say, I'm going here, where are the stations, and it will plan a route out for you. This is the site I always send people to. This is the Department of Energy Alternative Fuel Data Center. Click on electric. It'll take you to everything you needed to know, questions you didn't know you needed to ask. There are cost analyzers. They're thinking I might want a Prius. Do I want a Leaf? Do I want a Chevy Bolt? What are the costs? What are the costs of operation? What are the tax credits in my area? It's all there. So it's the #1 spot to go. I always recommend people go there, start asking questions. Okay, tried to run through this quick so we would have a lot of time for questions and get out of here on time. Questions? I can't see, sorry. Yes, ma'am. No. There's nothing to test. I mean, the most difficult thing that used to happen is when the plug-in hybrids were out there, it was very difficult to test them. And I came from that industry, and the cars are getting so clean, it's getting to the point, and Georgia's even thinking about doing away with the emission testing because our air quality is almost in standards. We get back into standards, we may do away with that. And the cars are so much cleaner today and so much more durable today than they were 20, 25 years ago when we started doing this. Yes, ma'am.
Someone mentioned earlier that there's going to be 19 electric buses at UGA. What about the other local colleges and universities? Will there be charging, not electric vehicles there, but charging stations for students?
Yes, and they're already installed. I'm aware where all the charging stations are at Tech because I spend more time down there than I do up at UGA. I'm an engineer, so I gravitate to Tech rather than UGA. But the stations are going in for the faculty, The stations, we're doing a project at Emory this week with a fast charger at Emory. So the stations are going in for the faculty and the students, and then they're listed on these sites.
I'm in Georgia Highlands in Rome and in Cartersville, and I know we don't, so is there anything?
Yes, there are. We're right now working on what's called corridors. We are finishing out the interstates here in Georgia so that every 50 miles there's a place to stop and charge your car. I have 2 holes left that I have to fill. One of the things I have to do as Clean Cities coordinators work with Federal Highway to identify these corridors. We're missing a charger at Tifton, and we're missing one between Brunswick and Savannah. I get those 2 installed, get somebody to get them in, and there will be on every interstate in Georgia a charger every 50 miles, including into North Carolina, into South Carolina, into Florida, into Tennessee, into Alabama. But there are parts of Georgia where we don't have a lot of charging. And I would say the northwest side of the state, Rome, is probably the least populated.
I would add to that, Don. If Georgia Highlands is probably served by Georgia Power, if I had to just guess. And I think if somebody reached out to them, they may could help facilitate getting something installed there.
Yeah, and there's a great group of guys at Georgia Power, and you can find them through me, and I can hook you up with them. And I know there's chargers at the previous Rome district office, but they were relocating them because that office was being closed down. Yes, sir.
What's it going to take for automobile insurance companies to play nice in the EV world?
Mine is. I went from driving a 2015 Leaf to a 2018 Tesla, and my insurance went up $90 a year total. Some insurance companies aren't playing nice, but there are a lot that are. And actually, if you look at it from a safety point of view, an electric car is more safe to drive than a gasoline car because it's not going to catch on fire if you run it into something. Because that's why they always talk about the Tesla fires, because they're so rare, they become news events. So I think over time, electrics will become less costly to insure because they got all this technology in them. They're safer. They have automated systems in them to prevent us from doing stupid things. And so that's my anticipation. And some of the insurance companies are at least not penalizing, but that is not the case with every insurance company. No. Yes, sir.
When I go to a gas pump, it's easy for me to tell the cost.
Yes.
When I go to a charging station, not so easy.
Not so easy.
So how can I tell what the cost is at the charging station, and why isn't it clearly marked?
It will be. There are federal rules coming which will require the station operators to post what the capacity, how much energy it will deliver over time, and what that energy is going to cost you. Right now, you're dependent on things like PlugShare or the Alternative Fuel Data Center, which has the information there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it is a different mindset, and yeah, you go in, you don't know what it's going to cost.
Specifically, the EV Go stations are actually more than gasoline.
Yes, they can be. And again, it's a free market economy. If they're priced more than gasoline and the Volta stations are free, guess what's going to happen? They're not going to go there anymore. And so they'll either have to lower their price or go out of business. And it is just going to be driven by that. But there's just not enough of them today. But this is happening very, very fast. Yes, sir, in the back.
You mentioned 50 miles along the interstate.
Yes.
What type of chargers will be located at those 50-mile segments?
What? I'm sorry, what?
What type of charger?
What type? They will, for most of the locations, they are using the 2 standards not used by Tesla. What's called CCS, the combined standard, and the CHAdeMO, which is what the Nissan Leaf uses. Most of the manufacturers who are building stations are putting both connectors on them. Now, the Tesla ones are farther apart because we can go further. The closest one to here is Macon. There's another one at Tifton. There's another one going in at Valdosta. So they're much further apart.
Will those stations be commercial stations, or will they be state-owned?
They will be commercial. The state does not operate any charging stations at all. Yes, ma'am.
So, these chargers that you're talking about being put in, are those, how fast can they charge?
Right now, most of them are 50 kilowatt, okay? That means that's a 20, 25, 30-minute event. What we're doing right now is through Electrify America, some of the very first 350 kilowatt stations are being installed. One of them somewhere here in Georgia, I have forgotten where it's going, but I've been told it's going in. That's 7 times faster. And so that's the other thing that's happening. But the car has to be capable of absorbing the energy at that rate. Not all are. The Tesla Model 3s will go up to 200, 250 kilowatts. The older ones, 150 kilowatts. But the Jags and the like that are coming will be able to handle those 300 plus kilowatt chargers. So that's the other thing that's happening is faster charging rates. Yes, sir.
Anybody actively pursuing the reduction in the penalty for electric cars, $213?
Yes. We have bills before the legislature every year. I'm trying not to be negative here, but your state representative, that's how this will get changed. We have been blocked every year in the House committees to get this bill passed. We tried to get it lowered to $100 again this year. It did not get out of committee by crossover day because it was blocked in the House committee. So I'd say reach out to your House member and tell them that we're going to pay attention to how they vote. We'll pay attention to how we vote. This has to be fixed because as an EV driver, I am paying the same amount of road use tax as an SUV getting 15 miles per gallon. I'm the highest tax per mile driver in the state.
Then we got time for maybe one more,
One more?
maybe 2 more.
Do you know how much it costs to alter the plug outlet in your garage to something that you can plug in your whatever?
I can only go on my own experience because I ran a 240 volt, 50 amp circuit to my garage. It's it's more than a dryer outlet, a range outlet probably is what you would want to call it. That from my electrical room, adding the breaker in the panel, running the wire out, putting the conduit in, it ran about $450. I usually tell customers, don't tell your electrician you're putting in an electric vehicle charging station because they're going to go, I don't know what that's going to cost me, I'm going to up the bid. Tell them you're putting in a dryer outlet, leave off the outlet.
We've got resources for you though, if you need to have one
yeah.
in. Yeah. We've got resources to get you a quote on that. So there's some actually the guys in the back, Quick Charge, can maybe help you understand what that cost may be for your situation. So
I'll be around for a while. I can answer some more
This
questions.
gentleman had his hand up for one more.
What? Yes, sir.
Is there any thought, I guess, in the Congress proposed that gas cars should not park in electric charging station spots?
Yes. We are working on ordinances. The city of Atlanta passed an ordinance last year requiring all new construction to have charging outlets. In that ordinance was a requirement that it was now a ticketable, towable offense, just like handicap to park in a charging station and not use the charging station. They asked us to remove that particular provision in the ordinance until they had a little bit more time to study it. But it is being worked on. In some parts of the country, it already is a ticketable event. I'm aware of one city in California that makes more revenue off of ticketing ICE drivers that park in charging stations than they make anywhere else. So they look at it as a revenue generating opportunity.
Thank you. You should give Don a round of applause for a great presentation.